Welcome to the International Franchise Association's Women Franchise Committee podcast, Her Success, the Stories of Female Franchise Leaders. I'm Leanne Caruso with Entrepreneur Media, and today I'm talking with Wanda Williams, the head of Yum Global Franchising at Yum Brands. I'll read a bit of her bio, but I'll kind of let her go through the rest. But Wanda is the head of Global Franchising at Yum Brands, the world's largest restaurant company with brands that include KFC, Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, and the Habit Burger Grill, In her current role, she is responsible for the Yum Global Franchise Office, which oversees Yum's overall franchise system management and partners with more than 2,000 franchisees in over 150 markets around the world. In May 2021, Wanda spearheaded the launch of the new Yum Center for Global Franchise Excellence in partnership with the University of Louisville to unlock opportunities to level the franchising playing field and create pathways to entrepreneurship for underrepresented people of color, women, and new and existing franchisees. Wanda currently serves on the International Franchise Association Board and the University of Louisville's Yum Center for Global Franchise Excellence Advisory Board. So that's a mouthful, and I cut it down. So thank you so much, Wanda, for joining us today. But I'd love to know more of your story. So can you tell us more about your background, your education, and how you got to where you are today?
Sure, I'd love to. Thank you, Leanne, so much for having me here today. It's funny, I'm the youngest of 5 girls. Some people say my dad's lucky. My dad would tell you he has a handful. But I think what was interesting about my background is both of my parents were in education. Education was very meaningful to them. Each of my sisters, as well as myself, have a minimum of 2 degrees. They always believed that education was something that no one can ever take from you. So that was something we learned really early on. I think when you grow up in a household of 5 girls, you also understand the concept of team, because at that point you're on a team, right? And I don't think you understand that when you're young, but I think it becomes valuable as you get older. And so as you can imagine, I went to undergraduate, graduate school, straight away, decided that, I really loved the business world and wanted to figure out how I could hop into the business world, which took a lot of twists and turns. And there's a couple of things I remember. One thing is when I was in law school, I had a professor tell me, and I never forgot it, behind every closed window is an open door. And it pretty much was something that he kind of felt that meant, look, if you run up against an obstacle or you run up against a no, that doesn't mean a yes isn't down the street. So really don't give up. So I thought that was really important. It's something that I've always, held on to. And it's funny because when I got into business, I was originally in marketing, loved marketing, but really wanted to get closer to the business, closer to driving, the bottom line impact to the business. And a good friend of mine said, look, I think you'd really be great in sales. And I was like, I don't know anything about sales. Like, that sounds like an absolute disaster. And he's like, no, I'm going to put you up for a job. So he was in HR. So I actually moved from a marketing position to a sales position, didn't know anything about it, but ended up absolutely loving it. So that was probably early in my career, one of the first pivots where I decided, look, I was technically trained and had a lot of work experience in one field, but I was just going to take a leap of faith because someone who I just, believed maybe knew better thought that I could be successful somewhere else. And he wasn't wrong. I love sales. I was very successful in sales. What my law school professor told me about, behind every closed window is an open door, that was like true, because in sales, a no ends up being a delayed yes, or at least that's what you have to tell yourself, which is actually pretty funny, but it's the only way to remain persistent. And so, I worked in a few sales roles, really loved it, and ran into the then CFO of Pizza Hut US, a gentleman by the name of Artie Stars. And my company, Waste Management, was hosting, different of our customers for the Waste Management Phoenix Open, which is the largest golf tournament, PGA tournament of the year. It kind of kicks off the season at the beginning of the year. And so we invited Yum, and Yum sent Artie Stars. He was up and coming, really brilliant executive. And Artie and I got a chance to spend a few days together. And during that time, he told me, hey, listen, we have some challenges at our brand. We need to really figure out how to kind of age down our franchise system, really energize the system. really drive more well-capitalized partners into the system, but we're really not sure how to do it. And I said, well, guess what? Funny you say that. I know exactly how to do it. I've been doing B2B sales, at Waste Management. I can tell you exactly what you need to know. And so he listened to me. And the next day when I saw him, he said, hey, there's another gentleman that wants to meet you if you have time, to fly down to Plano. His name is David Gibbs. He is our current CEO of Pizza Hut Domestic and Pizza Hut Global. I said, sure, I'd love to meet him. Plus, also, they were our customer. So a couple of weeks later, I flew down to meet David, kind of walked him through the same idea as to how they could set up a sales office, which, you call it franchise recruiting within the Pizza Hut system to really help them reach their goal. And, I didn't hear from Leanne, how things go for about 7 or 8 months. And then 8 months later, Artie calls and says, guess what? We got the funding to start this department you told us about. I was like, oh, that's great. Well, congratulations. I hope you find someone. He's like, no, like you have to come and interview for this. I was like, no, I have a job. I really appreciate it. He goes, no, just come talk to a few people. So they had me fly down to Louisville, and I was going to meet with Ann Byerland. She was the outgoing chief people officer. And then Tracy Skeens, who was the incoming chief people officer, and a few other folks in the HR department. So I fly down there. I meet with Ann. She was absolutely amazing. We had a great conversation, and Tracy was unable to fly in. So funny enough, we met via Teams, which probably seems very strange, but this was in 2015, which was not the norm back then. And so I was a little late to the meeting with Tracy, and I know she was on a really tight time schedule. So I met with Tracy. She was also amazing. She was tough, though. She asked a lot of great questions, a lot of tough questions. And I remember leaving that interview. I had a small break to go to the restroom. And I thought, what am I doing here? Like this is becoming real and this is becoming tough. I thought I was just coming to have a conversation. So I step out of the restroom, and they said, your schedule's changed. Greg Creed is ready. I'm like, well, Greg Creed is not on my schedule. Well, the CEO of Yum is ready. So I walk in, we get introduced, and he goes, you must be really important. They made me leave my burrito downstairs in the cafeteria, and I'm starving. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't know that he was a real jokester. I was just, completely mortified. And he said, well, sit down. So his assistant said, hey, look, you have 15 minutes. Greg's very busy. I said, not a problem. So we meet for 15 minutes. She knocks on the door and he goes, come back in an hour. So we went for an hour and 15 minutes. And the funny thing, Leanne, is we talked about the position maybe all of 2 minutes out of an hour and 15 minutes. And I remember leaving thinking that didn't go well. And he said, look, so nice to meet you. Look forward to seeing you in Dallas. And I said, oh, this isn't an interview. This is a conversation. You guys are interviewing a whole slate of people. And he said, sure. And that was on a Thursday. And the following Monday, Artie called to offer me the job. And I was a little shocked. And I thought to myself, let me think about it. So I took 48 hours. I talked to my parents. I really thought about it. It was a huge jump, right? I was leaving a really great sales job over, huge portfolio of business. I loved what I was doing, to go into a business I knew nothing about. Once again, right? One more pivot, jumping into a business I didn't know. It was also a global business in totality, even though I was going to work for the Pizza Hut US division. So, I really believed in Artie. I really believed in David Gibbs and Greg Creed and Tracy Skeens, all the people I met along the way. So I remember telling my parents, you know what, I'm going to try it. I'm going to move from Houston to Dallas. I don't know anybody up there. I'm just going to go. So, I drive up there. I start in November 2015. They start you out with a ton of one-on-ones, and met a few folks. And it was funny. My team and I were assembled by December of 2015, and we made our initial pitch to the Pizza Hut leadership team, which included both Artie Stars and David Gibbs. And, we hadn't sold a 10-store deal in 10 years. It was very tricky to get people interested in the Pizza Hut system because their sales and transaction numbers had been up and down a little bit. And so you really needed to give people a reason to believe. And so we went into the pitch and basically said, look, we know exactly what the blueprint is. We know how to get new buyers in here. We believe we can bring in enough to sell 2,200 stores. And I remember David Gibbs looked at me and he said, it's really ambitious. Y'all be super happy if you sell one. And I said back to David, if I sell one, you should fire me because that's not a big enough number. So he went ahead and he approved our budget. Needless to say, in the first 8 months, we sold 8 deals, and then we ended up selling to 2,200 restaurants with a really sharp team of folks with Pizza Hut in 18 months. And so he remembers that moment. It always makes him laugh. And from there, I moved from being the senior director of franchise recruiting to senior director of development. So I worked for our chief development officer for a year, helped him work on a new asset type for some of our urban locations, which is where Pizza Hut was really trying to gain penetration. And we were actually able to test the asset type in Los Angeles, and it performed very well. It was actually a really cool concept using kind of digital lockers where you could pick up your food without really having to interact with anyone. So that was obviously pre-COVID. So you imagine that leveraging that store and that technology into COVID also made that store extremely strong. And then, from there, we kind of led into the COVID time, and that was really interesting. I think it's one of the moments probably that, I was most proud of to be a part of a team like the Pizza Hut US team, obviously entering COVID. We had not so great positive same-store sales growth or transaction growth. We were slightly negative. We were really trying to crack the code. Domino's had been giving us a run for our money for the past 2 years, and they had beaten us to a lot of things that we knew we were great at. And so I've been working since January of 2020 with our international division. Obviously, COVID hit that first. So I stayed really close to our Asian markets because at that point they were already developing and leaning on and obviously executing contactless services. And so I went to my boss at that time, who's Nicola Berquier, who is our chief customer officer and chief operations officer, and said, look, I'm going to work with about 4 or 5 people on my operations team, because at this point, I was the vice president of operations over our 5,500 traditional units. And I said, we're going to take a team to rewrite all of our contactless services. And I'll come back to you. We should be able to complete it in 48 hours. But we'll have all of our 6-year-old procedures completely rewritten, which we did. When we had those rewritten, I went back to not only Nicola, my boss, but also Kevin Hoffman, who at that time was the interim president of Pizza Hut US, and said, hey, I think we need to go live with this on Monday. It was a Thursday. So the leadership team, they called an all-call meeting with our franchise owners. We got on that call. We walked them through the why. We walked them through what my team and I had done and told them that we wanted to go live on Monday. Obviously, they weren't happy. I'm pretty sure they wanted me to exit, but the Pizza Hut leadership team stood behind me and they believed it was the right thing to do. So we got everybody trained over the weekend. All of our services for contactless went live on Monday. And strangely enough, the US closed down on Wednesday. Well, we were considered essential because we already had processes in place. And we went from being, not so great in the same store sales growth and transaction growth space, slightly negative, to putting up plus 40% same store sales growth day after day, week after week. And in 2 months, the whole system was completely positive and we were on the top of our game. We created, I asked the president, Kevin Hoffman, if I could take a group of all of his senior leaders across every department. And we created a product model group, which I had the ability to lead. And that allowed us to iterate on our contactless services. We had 18 different versions from the day we launched it all the way through September of 2020. We were able to launch contactless curbside first. Our system was so proud. They were so strong. It was one of the top performing markets out of 150 markets in that year for Yum. And we were just super, super proud to be a part of a huge turnaround in such a trying time and such a troubling time. It's a lot of 20-hour days, 22-hour days, 7 days a week. But I can tell you, looking back, it was absolutely worth it just to see the reward for not only our team members, the ability to feed customers, the ability to feed first responders. It was absolutely an amazing team effort to be a part of. And then, as you mentioned, in November 2020, David Gibbs and Artie Stars, who was still there at the time, came back and said, look, we have a new challenge for you. Obviously, we are 98% franchised. COVID really pointed out that we need to make sure that at a Yum level that we understand everything going on. in the franchising space, make sure that we're consistent across our 150 markets, and just really make sure we can leverage the strength of our scale to get the best outcomes. So we'd love for you to leave Pizza Hut US and come work for Yum, the parent company, under Scott Catlett, who is our Chief Legal Officer and Chief Franchise Officer. So once again, I made another pivot to a job I knew nothing about again. And I joined Yum as the head of their Yum Global Franchise Office in November 2020. It took me about a month with Scott. We set up our strategy, which we presented to the Yum executive team and then to the board, which really kind of hinges on 4 pillars. One pillar is how do we attract and maintain the best-in-class franchisees? That looks uniquely different in the US than it does internationally. In the US, it's really how do we look more like the communities that we serve? How do we bring more diverse faces and voices to the table, which only makes us stronger and better? And then globally, there's a really big focus on how do we make sure that we have more women throughout all of the different levels of our franchise organizations. So a lot of great efforts and work along that line in the last 2 years. Our second pillar of work is really around global franchisee health. So how do we make sure we have the proper processes and tracking systems in place at a Yum level to make sure we understand at any time how all of our franchisees are performing, really making sure that they're stable and in a growing state. And if we do see somebody slipping, how do we quickly put the right team around them to get them back on track? So we have a whole host of activities around that, as well as policies that have been created. And then the third pillar of work is around how do we create a franchise center of excellence? Being the largest restaurant company in the world, we should be the best at what we do. And one of those things that we did was create the partnership with the University of Louisville to create the Yum Center for Global Franchise Excellence, which I'm sure we'll talk about a bit more. And there's been a lot of great things that have come out of that, including the Yum Accelerator program. And then the fourth pillar of work is really how do we kind of leverage our scale to really amplify all the things that go well in a franchise system. What really happens when good players in the system are helping franchisees create generational wealth? And how can we share those stories and share that information not only on the Hill, but with our investors and the communities at large? So I know that was a long-winded intro, but hopefully that'll give us some other items to talk about.
Wow, that's so impressive. And I love hearing your journey and your story. And it seems like they certainly trusted you to keep taking these steps, even though you felt like you didn't really know what you were doing. But sounds like you took them all head on and are in the middle of doing so many great things. What is your day-to-day like at Yum? At Yum, how many people do you manage? I'm just curious to know.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I manage a handful of people. What I love about them is I would say they are the best of the best that I was able to recruit from our brands, who obviously are a great factory for really high potential talent. My day-to-day would be working across all 4 brands in the 150 markets. So I have a mix of, meetings with our GMs internationally, with our presidents and CEOs domestically, with our brand leadership team. So it depends on what we're bringing to the table. If we're releasing a new polish on leverage, then we would be meeting with all of the brand leadership teams to walk them through that policy, to make sure they understand how it works, to make sure they can communicate that forward with their franchisees. I meet with a lot of potential new buyers who are in the US, but may be interested purchasing, across our brands globally. So we'll have those types of conversations. We obviously have a lot of interaction with the University of Louisville and the Yum Center. There's a lot of projects that we generate and produce out of that center. So there's a lot of meetings with respect to the center and that work. And then we're bringing some exciting new tools to all of our brands, specifically in the US, to help attract more diverse franchise owners. So a lot of that work is starting to kick off. And then that work is obviously socialized first across our brands, and then it's brought back and then socialized at our executive team level before final decisions are made to go ahead and implement and execute. So that's just a little snapshot of who I may meet with. In addition, I mentor a lot of young ladies across our brands. And so I sprinkle in mentorship sessions in addition to that. And then anytime we work on any sort of PR releases for any of the products or projects that we work on, I work really closely with Rick and Virginia on our Young PR team, who help keep us in line and make sure we're explaining things in the proper manner.
It sounds exhausting, but you handle it with such grace. Can you tell me more about the mentorship program? Is that a formal program, or is that something you do, or that you created?
That's a great question. I think, during my journey at Yum, specifically, the first 5.5 years at Pizza Hut US, we obviously were in the office, right? The large majority of the time. So we had several hundred people that worked there. So I would interact with several folks in different divisions. And there were young ladies that worked in marketing or in IT or in operations that said, look, I'd really love for you to, help guide me. I'm younger in my career. I really, love the things that you've been doing. Just want to understand, how I can get on track, how I can continue to stay focused. So I've just built relationships with young ladies along the way. We also participate in WFF. Tracy Skeens is the current board chair this year. And so we take a group of about 200 young ladies from across our brands there to continue to develop them professionally and personally. I met a few ladies there that also said, hey, I'd love if you could mentor me. So, they're about 30-minute sessions once a quarter. But it's just something that I personally set up with these young ladies just to make sure I could help them as much as I can.
Oh, that's so great. So tell us about the Yum Center for Global Franchise Excellence, and an initiative that you helped launch based on one of your 4 pillars, it sounds like. And I'd love to learn more about the accelerator program through Howard University and all of the great things that you guys are up to with that program.
Yeah, so, it really started in 2020 when Yum announced their commitment, the Unlocking Opportunity Initiative, where they committed to spend $100 million over 5 years and really make sure that those dollars were spent towards efforts focused on franchising education, diversity and inclusion, and entrepreneurship. So we were one of the first divisions that went to Yum saying, look, we have a great idea as to how to invest some of those dollars from the Unlocking Opportunity Initiative that really kind of hit on the franchising education goal. And Kathy Gosser, Dr. Kathleen Gosser, to everyone who knows her outside of Yum, was a wonderful longtime Yum employee, over 30 years. And she left Yum to continue her passion to teach. And she joined the University of Louisville, and she had this great idea to really continue to bring the franchising world to young students, because traditionally most students don't learn about franchising when they're in college, right? Unless your family's really in the business or you know somebody who's in the business, it's maybe not something you think about, hey, when I graduate, I want to become a franchise owner. So Kathy was really passionate that this was really a strong career path and really just wanted to make sure she could attract more people to the industry. So once we got a hold of Kathy and we knew she had created some great classes at the University of Louisville, we wanted to know how we could put that on steroids and how we could mesh that with our whole mission for unlocking opportunity. And so we partner with Kathy to create this concept, to create the Yum Center for Global Franchise Excellence. And it was one of the most powerful things I think Yum did, because not only were we able to shape all of the students coming through the U of L program that were actually on campus, but there was a virtual component that allowed us to then shape the lives of students anywhere around the world. And so when we launched that in May of 2021, we were extremely excited. And we initially launched it with 3 different education paths. A 6-week boot camp. It requires no formal education. You can take that virtually. We leverage it many ways internally in Yum. We leverage it for new buyers who really just want to understand, how do I really build a solid, successful, independent franchise business? We leverage it for employees who want to know just a little bit more about the franchising model itself. And we leverage it for employees who really have a passion to become a franchise owner and operator. Now, obviously at Yum, we teach you how to run our restaurants. But what this program teaches you, again, is how to set up your business, how to build your business, how to grow your business, and how to create generational wealth. Because that's what I think is the magic of what the franchise industry can do. So that's the 6-week boot camp, which basically condenses some of our other pathways into a shorter time period. We also have an undergraduate program and a graduate program. So we're really proud. Dr. Gosser has done an amazing job. All of her classes on campus are sold out, completely full. Anything that's offered virtually, same thing. She's had to open up more classes because there's so many people who are interested, because I don't think it dawned on a lot of people, especially young folks, that this is like really a real career path where I can make money and build, a generational pathway for my family and myself. So we're super excited about that. But we also realized, one of our missions was, how do we make sure we attract and bring more underrepresented people of color into this space? So specifically in the US, that would be African American, Hispanic, Latino, and females into the franchise ownership rank. And we saw that there were 3 barriers to entry, right? There was a lack of access to capital, lack of franchising education, and lack of just the access to the right context of the brand to even know, how do I get into this business? How do I even look at a bid? What do I need to do to apply? So we realized that if those were the 3 barriers really preventing underrepresented people of color and females from getting into this business, we had knocked down one, which is the lack of franchising education, by partnering with the University of Louisville, but we had 2 more to knock down. So the University of Louisville and myself approached Howard University, and we asked them, would they be interested in creating the new YUM Franchise Accelerator Program. And Howard was starting their entrepreneur school, and they were super excited to be able to bring this dimension to that center, since we had already built all the curriculum through the YUM Center. And they said, yep, we will definitely participate. So in the fall of last year, we partnered together and we launched an all-call across Howard University and University of Louisville's second-year MBA students. So basically explained the program, explained what the program would involve, to see how many people we could get to participate. So we had 100 people apply for the program, and then we whittled that down to the 10 best. So they went through several different interview panels with both universities, and we ended up with 6 students from Howard University and 4 from the University of Louisville. We ended up with 5 men, 5 women, 9 African-American students, and 1 Hispanic Latina student. And basically the program they were offered and the program they participated in started in January of this year. And it was a semester-long program. And we provided them with the YUM Accelerator program with 3 elements. So the first element, which was an educational component. So each student received a $10,000 scholarship to take our graduate level education through our YUM Center of Global Franchise Excellence. They received a mentorship component. And this was really cool because depending on where each of the students lived, because a lot of the students were virtual at this time, we paired them with a large franchise owner, either within our Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, or KFC system. They were allowed to visit that franchise owner at their corporate headquarters, shadow their leadership team, and participate in some in-restaurant training. We also took them on 2 experiential trips. One to Louisville, where they got to spend the day with our KFC US team. And they also got to visit our YUM Center for Global Franchise Excellence at the University of Louisville. And a second trip to DC, where we held a congressional reception. And we got really strong participation from the House and the Senate to really come over and hear what the students were working on, their dreams of becoming entrepreneurs. And we really had both sides of the aisle come and congratulate the students for wanting to build their own business, wanting to build more jobs in their communities, and just really excited to see the future leaders of tomorrow. And then all of that led into a really cool entrepreneurship component, which was a fast pitch competition that the students participated in. They were each given a deal to actually bid on. And then we had our largest franchisees who were the judges of the competition. And the output of the competition was choosing 2 of the students who will actually become franchise owners. And we will be selling them stores from one of our largest franchisees. We'll actually be selling both of the winner stores, as well as training them for a little bit longer of a time period to make sure that they really understand what it takes to own and operate these businesses. And then from there, we will see their stories begin. So it's been very exciting. But what we really loved about our program was the fact that not only did we bring education together with franchising, but as well our franchise system. So it was really, 3 different groups of folks coming together saying, we believe we can build a better tomorrow together. We believe that we can continue to diversify our system to look more like the communities that we serve. And we were just truly pleased with the outcome and look forward to doing it again. We also filmed all of the footage of the program. So basically, we filmed it from beginning to end. And we'll be working to pitch the program to some streaming media companies to see if they would like to pick up the filming for the next session of this program. So that was also a long-winded answer, but hopefully I answered your question.
Oh my gosh, it's so incredible. And what's so fascinating to me is most of the things that you've talked about have been in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
it's unbelievable where your journey has taken you in the last 2 years. Obviously, a lot of hard work leading up to it, and the incredible work that you did over COVID and kind of turning things around. So, I also sit on the board of the Yum Center for Global Franchise Excellence, and so thrilled to work alongside you and your vision and Yum's vision to see this really come to life. And Dr. Kathy Gosser is incredible. I also got to interview her for this. At this time, it hasn't been released yet, but it's fun to hear her story as well. So tell me, and sorry for my dogs barking. Every podcast they make an appearance, but so can you tell me, like, who was your greatest influence along the way, if you can narrow it down?
So who influenced me the most, or would you say? That's a great question. I would say probably my father. My father is probably one of the most even-keeled, just very down to earth. He's the king of everything can be said in the simplest terms so that everybody can understand them. He probably writes better than anybody I know. But he told me something early in my career that I also didn't forget, that I think, has stuck with me for a long time, has probably been extremely helpful for everything that I've had to tackle, and, have probably led to some of my greatest achievements, which is, Wanda, I need you to always focus on your work. I need you to shut out any noise about what other people are doing or about whether other people are achieving. I just really need you to focus on your work. And if you can focus on your work, all the rest of it will come. You don't have to worry about when your next promotion's coming, or your next big job, or your next big accolade. Because if you just do your work, everything else will fall in line. And I truly believe that. I know it sounds so simple and probably like, duh, of course, but it's really true. I mean, sometimes when we get into positions, whether that's a corporate position or private company, there's so much noise around, well, what am I going to do next? And how do I get the next big job? And how do I make more money? And why is somebody else achieving? And all of that is just background noise. And I think it prevents us a lot of times from really focusing on what we need to do to be successful, which ultimately makes the team successful and then the company. So I would say my father, he has a very clear but simple view about things. No problem's too complex. And there's always an answer if you just put your mind to it.
That's such great advice. It's really all about kind of being present, which we hear so much about, and just kind of focusing on what you're meant to do, and the rest will come. I love that. So what, I'll ask you this. Let me go to that last. What is your proudest moment so far?
I think the one of my proud moments, I think there are two, I'd say, in the last 2 years, was definitely being a part of the Pizza Hut US team in the turnaround. It is absolutely a great feeling of being an underdog and becoming a winner. Everybody should try it at least once in their life. It's something you can't describe. It's a feeling of pride. I mean, of course you have the happiness, but it's a feeling of deep pride and honor. And it lets you know that when things are super tough, you can push past it because you've done it before. And once you've done it once, it's pretty hard to tell yourself you can't do it again. And I think you learn the most in the greatest times of despair and challenge. You don't learn when things are easy. So when things are so tough and you're not really sure how to see your way out, and you get out and you succeed, it's a beautiful feeling. So I would say that's one. I'd say the other one was when we selected the 2 winners for the Young Franchise Accelerator program, and they had their families on the line, and just those tears of joy, the tears of success, the tears that they felt like I now could put myself on a pathway to create generational wealth for my family, where I'm running a business that I own versus working for somebody else. It's really great to think that, wow, a small, simple idea could actually impact somebody's trajectory in life. So I would say those 2 moments.
Yeah, the beautiful moments. And I think one of the things about franchising is it not only affects their families and their moments, but it affects so many other people when now they're awarded, a unit, and then they can affect lives and change lives as well, and really contribute to their communities. So it's just this like waterfall effect, right? So
yes. And the good news is they're not getting a store. They will be getting a group of stores, because we believe at Yum that one store is a job, a group of stores is a business.
Mm-hmm. That's so great. I just got chills. Okay, last question. If you could tell yourself one thing 20 years ago, what would that be?
It would probably be something that a CEO told me a long time ago, which is just slow down and enjoy what you're doing, because you won't be doing the same thing forever. And I think that we get caught sometimes in moving up, getting more, doing something bigger and better, grabbing a bigger title. And there's so much to be enjoyed and learn on the journey, because once you get to the destination, you're there, right? But the time it takes you to get there is probably the most precious. And it's the thing that I would have probably stayed in, spent more time in, and relished more along the way, versus the extreme focus on the goal to get someplace. That's what I would tell myself, is slow down a little bit, enjoy what you're going through, enjoy the people you're with, and enjoy what you're learning. Because all of that ultimately, it helps you get where you're going.
That's great. Well, thank you so much again, Wanda, for taking the time today. I know you've got a lot on your plate and very busy. If anybody wants to find out about any of the great initiatives that you told us today, what can they do? Where can they go?
That is a great question. You should be able to go to yum.com. That is our official website. You could also Google any articles about any of our projects. We have a great PR team, and then that might be a way to access then yum.com to find out more. But it's out there. And we're just so happy to be a part of this program. Thank you, Leanne. You've been a gracious hostess, and thank you so much for even inviting myself and Yum to be able to participate.
Of course, it's an honor. So thank you again.